Welcome back to Stories 13, the place where forgotten shadows still whisper. Tonight, we'll uncover the mystery of a village school that has stood silent for 50 years. But silence doesn't always mean the story is over. In the quiet village of Millbrook, nestled among rolling hills and ancient forests, there lies a story that still sends shivers down the spines of those who dare to speak of it. It's a tale of mystery, of loss, and of an unspeakable tragedy that befell the community decades ago. Our story begins with Alex, a curious teenager who stumbled upon an old, yellowed newspaper while cleaning out his grandmother's attic. The faded headline caught his eye: "Local school shuttered after mysterious disappearance of children." Intrigued, Alex read on, learning of a horrific event that had occurred in 1972, when several children vanished without a trace from Millbrook Elementary. The article spoke of a frantic search, of parents' anguished cries, and of a community torn apart by grief and suspicion. But despite extensive efforts, no trace of the missing children was ever found. In the wake of the tragedy, the school was closed, its doors chained shut, and the building left to decay at the edge of the village. As Alex finished reading, a chill ran down his spine. He had always wondered about that old building on the outskirts of town, the one adults whispered about and children dared each other to approach. Now, armed with this newfound knowledge, he felt an irresistible urge to investigate. The next day, as dusk settled over Millbrook, Alex made his way to the abandoned school. The building loomed before him, a hulking silhouette against the darkening sky. Its windows were like hollow eyes, staring blankly into the encroaching night. Alex approached cautiously, his heart pounding in his chest. The main entrance was secured with heavy chains and a rusted padlock, but as Alex circled the building, he noticed something odd. One of the ground floor windows was slightly ajar, as if inviting him in. He hesitated for a moment, then, driven by an inexplicable compulsion, he squeezed through the opening and into the darkness beyond. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the musty scent of decay. Alex fumbled for his flashlight, its beam cutting through the gloom to reveal a scene frozen in time. Desks and chairs stood in neat rows, exactly as they had been left half a century ago. Books lay open on tables, pencils still poised on pages, as if their owners had simply vanished mid-lesson. Alex moved slowly through the room, his footsteps echoing in the eerie silence. As he approached the front of the class, his light fell upon the blackboard. What he saw made his blood run cold. There, written in faded chalk, were names, dozens of them, some fully visible, others partially erased. But it was the last name on the list that caused Alex's breath to catch in his throat. It was his own grandmother's name, written and then viciously scratched out. Suddenly, a sound broke the silence, the faint echo of children's laughter. Alex whirled around, his flashlight beam dancing wildly across the empty room. "Hello," he called out, his voice trembling, but only silence answered him. Heart racing, Alex moved into the hallway. The laughter came again, louder this time, seeming to emanate from everywhere and nowhere at once. He began to run, his footsteps thundering through the empty corridors. The laughter followed, growing louder, more insistent, until it filled his ears with a cacophony of ghostly mirth. In his panic, Alex burst through a set of double doors and found himself in the school's gymnasium. He stopped short, his flashlight illuminating a sight that chilled him to his very core. There, lined up neatly along the far wall, were dozens of children's shoes, small sneakers, Mary Janes, and little boots. all coated in a thick layer of dust, untouched for 50 years. Alex approached slowly, his mind reeling. Each pair of shoes seemed to represent a lost child, a life cut tragically short. As he stood there, overwhelmed by the weight of the tragedy, he noticed something out of the corner of his eye. A faint glimmer of light was seeping from behind a large bookshelf pushed against the wall. Curiosity overcoming his fear, Alex approached the bookshelf. With trembling hands, he pushed against it, and to his surprise, it swung open easily, revealing a hidden room beyond. Heart pounding, he stepped inside. The room was small and circular, its walls covered in children's drawings. But these were no ordinary pictures. Each one depicted a child, but where their faces should have been, there was only blank white space. Dozens of these faceless children stared out at Alex, their empty visages seeming to follow him as he moved. In the center of the room stood a small table, and on it a single sheet of paper. Alex picked it up with shaking hands. It was a class roster, dated the day of the disappearance. And there, at the bottom of the list, was his grandmother's name, the only one not crossed out. Suddenly, the reality of the situation came crashing down on Alex. The hidden room, the faceless drawings, his grandmother's name, it all pointed to a truth too terrible to contemplate. With a cry of terror, he dropped the paper and ran, fleeing through the gymnasium and back into the maze-like corridors of the school. As he ran, the laughter returned, louder than ever. It seemed to come from the very walls themselves, a chorus of ghostly voices calling out to him. Alex ran faster, desperate to escape, to put as much distance between himself and this cursed place as possible. Just as he reached the window he had entered through, a new sound cut through the cacophony, the clear, resonant tone of a school bell. Alex froze, his blood turning to ice in his veins. He knew, as surely as he knew his own name, that the school's bell tower had collapsed decades ago. With a final burst of terror-fueled energy, Alex hurled himself through the window and out into the cool night air. He ran and ran, not stopping until he reached the safety of his home. As he collapsed onto his bed, gasping for breath, he could still hear the faint echo of that impossible bell, calling the long-lost children of Millbrook Elementary to a class that would never end. In the days that followed, Alex tried to convince himself that it had all been a dream, a product of an overactive imagination fueled by that old newspaper article. But deep down, he knew the truth. The abandoned school at the edge of Millbrook held secrets, dark, terrible secrets that had been buried for 50 years. And as he lay awake at night, listening to the wind whisper through the trees outside his window, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that someday, somehow, those secrets would come to light. For in Millbrook, the past was never truly gone, and the echoes of that tragic day still lingered, waiting for someone to finally hear their silent cries. Thank you for listening to this chilling tale on Stories 13. If the bell still rings, maybe the children were never truly gone. Join us again for more stories that should have stayed buried in the past.